So we know that in typical US classrooms, we don't often have kids talking, and especially about mathematics. And what they talk about matters, obviously. If you have them turn to talk or talk about something that's not that interesting, it doesn't work very well, right? So if we're thinking of our traditional, the way we've taught traditionally, there might not be as much to talk about. But now, again, using Connected Math, a program that has multiple opportunities, we can really hone and think about this idea of talk moves. Because again, we know that when you're talking, you're doing the thinking, right? So if we want to encourage this, our session today is really about how do we make that happen in our classroom.
So the question might be, we're talking about talk, but what exactly are talk moves? What do we define talk moves as anyway? So the term talk moves refers to strategic ways of asking questions and inviting participation from students in your classroom and having those classroom conversations. There's no one definitive list. If you go to look up like what are talk moves in mathematics classrooms, you're going to find different answers in different places. We're going to use one resource today that was the first resource we looked at, and that explains 5 specific talk moves. It's been updated, and there's lots more in the updated version. We're going to watch a short video clip that talks about different talk moves. So there's no one definitive list of talk moves that you're going to find or see. So we're just going to get some of them out on the table today and talk about specific ones, and you might find other ones that we don't specifically talk about. But all of these talk moves from different authors have identified they've identified talk moves from observation of skilled teachers and their ways of supporting productive talk. So a talk move is something that helps to support productive talk in your class. So we can all have talk going on, but we want it to be productive talk in our mathematics classroom. And then this we really think is so important is that the use of talk moves takes explicit practice. So you can't just expect that your kids are going to know what to do. And as a teacher, it's really hard for me sometimes with some of these moves to remind myself, oh, don't say that. That's not going to be the right thing to say to really get the talk to be productive. So not only does it take explicit practice on the students, as a teacher, it really takes explicit practice for me to remember, okay, what would be the best thing to say to move our conversation forward instead of me, kids looking at me, and I don't remember who said it, but that hierarchy, I don't want kids to think that I'm the person to look to, is it right or wrong? So we're going to kind of view all of these things today as we look at talk moves. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to watch a short video clip, and as you watch the video clip, we ask that you think about some talk moves that are identified by the teacher who's talking in the video.
And it's actually an elementary class. It's on the teaching channel, so it's public, obviously. And yeah, it's obviously not Connected Math because it's elementary class. But so just see if you notice, or just kind of think about again, as Jen said, what talk moves she actually brings forward.
Talk moves are a way to encourage discourse in the classroom. And the first talk move that I learned was repeating.
That is 80. It's not 20.
Can you explain, Romy, what she just did up there?
What she said was 80 divided by 4 is not 20, so it's not going to be the same as those two because when you add them up, it's going to be 80.
At first, no one can repeat it because children were used to the teacher called on that person, so I'm going to check out until she calls on me. And then suddenly it was like, whoa, we need to pay attention. And they really started paying attention to each other, and they could finally repeat.
I would like to add something with Jason when Jason said 60, 80.
Another talk move is adding on, where they listened very carefully to what somebody said, and then they felt that something else needed to be added. So they would say, I'd like to add on to what so-and-so said. Who has an answer that they want to give? Jason?
40.
And why do you think, are there any other answers? One of the talk moves that we created is the silent signal in the classroom that I'm thinking the same thing as you are. In my class, the I agree with you sign is this. It's like you and I think alike. that is so encouraging to the student who is speaking when they suddenly see everybody doing this to them. They're like, yeah, everybody's thinking the way I am, I rock. And they are encouraged by what they're saying.
You can't change the divisor, you can only change the dividend.
So what do you think, Jason, about what she said?
She said,
Revising our thinking is permission to change our mind once we are confronted with new information.
I think she might be right, so I'm starting to think it's false.
So you're starting to wonder, that talk move is valuable not just in math, but it's so valuable everywhere, that when you're confronted with new information, you should change your thinking. You should take what you learn, merge it with what you already know, and then come to a new understanding that it's okay and that it's expected.
So we'd like you to just turn and talk for a moment with someone at your table about what talk moves you noticed, what she talked about, what she identified as talk moves in that short video clip. I love all the productive talk that's going on in the room. We're going to come back together and we're going to look at 5 specific talk moves and learn a little bit more about them. That you want to share out now before we move on? Anything, new insight or new learning that kind of was an aha moment for you?
I can. When we were talking about number 1 and 2, I guess the terminology, I rethought the terminology for each one of those things, because revoicing to me originally, I thought would mean, you know, when I have kids repeat what other kids are saying, and I chime in here and there, but they're really having the dialogue. And so I got more clarification on how those two things are different. And one is student voice and one is teacher voice.
Any other thoughts or things you'd like to share out?
I have a question. Like, I don't know anything about this, but is this a poster on your wall?
No.
So you don't, like, I was thinking how powerful it would be if kids were using these 5 words within their own small groups when they're working collaboratively day after day after day, whereas the teacher's directing it sometimes, but I was wondering if that happens. Do you get kids saying these kind of things, hey, we're gonna rewrite, I'm gonna try to restate what you said.
Well, that'd be great. I think that's where we want to go. I think our kids are used to, they're used to wait time or hearing us say, we'll wait, or then if we have that uncomfortable silence, they know that the next thing out of our mouth is going to be, okay, turn and talk. I think our kids are used to it, that they know that they can all stare at us and look and it can be uncomfortable, but we're not going to give the answers. Okay. We have it.
Yeah,
So
right, yeah. But I do know some teachers who actually, and we'll give you another resource from a different place, but that have made actually little, like on those rings, like little prompts that, you know, will say, I agree with you, you know, like as beginning prompts. Because again, and especially, there's actually another video we didn't show, but especially like for L's, right? So to give kids the beginning sentence starters that they should be using in their groups, like on a little keychain thing or whatever. And I think I have those as cards that I can, you know, we'll figure out how that works, but to share them. Because again, so that each group has this little ring of sentence starters. This is how I expect you to be talking to each other. Because the kids have to be part of this, right? You can't just do it to them, like, I'm gonna do talk moves. You can't do talk moves, right? I mean, you can, but it's not gonna work out well if they don't know what the heck you're doing, right? So you wanna have, that's what I really hear in what you're saying too, is the kids need to really understand.
I mean, I didn't just understand, is it teacher directed? So it's intended teacher directed, but it would be okay to be trying to get kids.
Right, the teacher, you as a teacher have to initiate these, right? But the kids have to own it and engage in it. And understand that we're doing this because I value you talking to each other, because I want to hear your ideas, because your peers need to hear your ideas. What you have to say is important, right? So if you lay that out with the kids, then, but you have to say that multiple times, because oftentimes kids are asked to be quiet.
I think it also helps get everyone engaged, just the repeating, as we've talked a lot to different groups about okay, if they know that that's the expectation, that they're gonna have to repeat it, they're gonna listen more carefully, but also letting them not have a total out, but if they can't repeat it, then teaching them to say, turn to the person that was talking, could you please repeat that for me? And have the expectation that they know, okay, now you've asked them to repeat it, guess what the next question is? Now can you repeat what they just said? So not letting them off the hook. They have to be part of the conversation and teaching kids that that's our expectation and why that's our expectation.
Piggybacking off of that idea of having the expectation and holding them to that, you know, the waiting thing, in looking at that move, that's like most awkward and for the kid and for the teacher. And I wanted a way to like remove some of that awkwardness. And it's, if you can't come back with what you think or what your reasoning is or whatever, then come back with a question. Come back with what is, and when I started doing that and kids like were like, well, at least I can ask a question. You know, and in that like, why? Not just, I don't get it. You know, that's not a question. What specifically do you have a problem with right now? That has changed to have an out. Like and it's also informing my instruction in what's going through your head right now, which is all I really want to know.